So this is a concept you can think about for any mallet instrument. We're going to talk about some of the idiosyncrasies related to vibraphone versus marimba, and I'm going to demonstrate both here on the marimba. So sometimes we have really awkward four mallet chord voicings, and I'll give an example. This is for a piece we're doing where you're moving from a D minor 7 flat 5 voicing to a G7 flat 9 voicing. This is without the 7th, right? And so it's intuitive to say, well, mallets 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, I guess I'll just kind of keep that, if you want to think about loosely this way, bass, tenor, alto, soprano. The right hand is playing the upper two voices and the left hand is playing the lower two voices. You could just think about that. But now what you can do is have voice crossing between the mallets to where you have wider intervals in both hands. Especially, we've got to do things like one-handed rolls. It can be much easier to do a one-handed roll with a wider interval. Now I'm talking about this from the perspective of a Stevens grip player. There might be nuances in other grips, but I think generally speaking, wider intervals are more natural than the super narrow intervals. Case in point though here is instead of doing the D minor 7 flat 5 voicing this way, do voice crossing. So now I have wider intervals in each hand, but I'm still getting the same chord, right? So what I can do is go from the D minor 7 flat 5 this way, and then all I actually have to do is keep this static. So I'm keeping static motion in the right hand with the D and the A flat, taking the 7th and the 3rd of the D minor 7 flat 5, and just doing contrary motion with those voices. So instead of this, where I'm shifting both hands to get that shift, I only have to shift one hand. Now there's obvious advantages to this, particularly on vibraphone, where we talked about you want to try and aim for the center of the bar. It's not going to sound quite as full as the edge of the bar on the marimba. Marimba, you can do this as well, but where it gets tricky is if you're doing a roll. On vibraphone, we hit a chord, we sustain it, and once we let go, there's nothing with our foot that's going to increase or decrease the volume. We can't do a decrescendo or crescendo. It's like piano in that way. Marimba, though, we have the ability, and we could certainly do this in vibraphone, though it's less common, to roll. And when you're rolling, this really changes the game in terms of adding another variable to think about in terms of how you're going to do the sticking for the chord. So I'm going to do one of two ways. I'm going to go ahead and do a roll crescendo. Now, if I'm rolling evenly in both hands, that's one thing. But let's say I just want the upper notes to crescendo and not the lower notes. If I do the alternate sticking, then we're going to get this as a crescendo. Notice how these notes are the ones crescendoing. Maybe I don't want that B and G to crescendo. Maybe I really want these upper two voices to crescendo. Sounds very different than if I have the cross sticking. So those are all variables to think about when you're thinking about how am I going to voice, or excuse me, stick two different chords. And again, you can do that or that. You could do that, right, or that. And of course, experimenting with other sticking options.